Meaning that if the letter of appointment in question that has been going on says from Chief of Staff's office and the head of service office accepted it and all the other agencies accepted it, then something is fundamentally wrong with Nigeria. So that's what ICPC
So either original or fake,
doesn't
the
matter.
letter shouldn't have ever emanated from the Chief of Staff office.
Absolutely.
And naturally, let me take this personally.
Yes.
When you were appointed the head of FRSC,
Yes.
the letter came to you by mail or by hand, or how did it come to you?
It was delivered by an officer of the Secretary to Government's office. Came with a motorbike, came with 2 letters. I took one. I signed the original, collected by me. I acknowledged it, and he went back.
So, what did you then do after you've obtained that, received that letter?
I went to FRSC. I called the deputy commissioner who was in charge. Said, I have been appointed. It's my letter of appointment. He said, okay, I'll prepare a handover day to hand over to you. And the SGF's copy of the letter went to him. The copy of that letter went to the Chief of Staff. The copy of that letter, because the approval was granted by the President by a memo by the SGF asking the President to approve the appointment of Osita Chidoka. As the President approved, the Principal Secretary to the President copied Chief of Staff, copied ADC, copied CSO, and said, forwarded to SGF and said, see, vide paragraph this presidential approval to convey. The SGF took it. Based on that letter, the SGF now wrote me a letter and copied the FRSC, the acting head, deputy commissioner.
So your first, did you have to communicate with the SGF office afterwards? For any reason?
No, I did.
Your business was with the agency.
But the challenge was that I reported to the SGF's office. The FRSC is based in the SGF's office. So he was my
reporting
supervisor. So I need to engage with them. But if it was like a ministry, I would have just gone to the ministry, given the minister my letter of appointment, and then go take over the organization. So for a non-existent organization which has been formed, you need to see the presidential instrument that created that agency. So this is a culture of, oh, that is what they said, and everybody is accepting. Oh, it's from Chief of Staff's office, everybody is accepting. What it means is that our institutional capacity has weakened over time, and it has nothing to do with this government. So they don't have to take it personal. They need to figure out whether the Chief of Staff wrote a letter or did not write a letter. A letter that is not written by the Secretary to Government ought not to instigate all this action, the consequential action that happened.
Because part of what Mr. Adeyemi is facing charges over, part of the charges is forgery.
Yes, he must.
That letter was forged. The SGF internal communication had denied any, and the police is also coming forward to say this is a forged letter. That is the position of the federal government. But there are fundamental questions, sir.
Yes.
Your office is within the federal government infrastructure.
Yes.
And that was because it existed. A critical question will be, can any agency exist without being created by law?
No. But a council can.
Like this?
A council.
For example,
yes.
If the federal government had not disowned this,
yes,
there could be
a council,
a presidential foreign investment council can exist.
In terms of reference, it will have a time lag. It is for this purpose, and it will either reside in the office of the Secretary to Government. So all their budgets. So whenever we set up things like the conference, national conference, national council on this, they are all resident in the SGF's office. There is an office in the SGF's office, the Political Affairs Office, that handles all these organizations, ad hoc committees, like the Oputa panel. It existed. It was in the office of the Secretary of the Government. The Constitutional Conference Committee, office of the Secretary to Government. So there is the Political Affairs Office, which handles these ad hoc committees and councils. But if it is a statutory agency, when an agency moves away from council to become a statutory agency, then it has to be backed by law.
So, because there are also those who say that fundamentally in this country, there are a long list of organizations that exist that are not created by law. and they have staff, they run, and in fact, and I know that there are
any example.
Some example.
Any example?
Yeah, there are litany of them. But let me give an example of there are some agencies that now new laws that have emerged. Take, for example, the data protection law.
Yes.
When it was there's a data protection the Establishment Act, which created the National Data Protection Commission. You know, before it was existing, before the law now came, and it became there was an Establishment Act to create. And there are those who say this kind of agencies sometimes operate in silos under some other established agency. Could this have been one of it? Because there is the inclination that the Professor Doyin Salami panel are set up by the Buhari government. If you look at the building where this office was situated in the Federal Secretariat, you will see Professor Doyin Salami's picture on the wall. And there are those who say that was the same office occupied by this man and his team, which in one of the documents show that this office is supposed to have about 300 staff in the 36 states of the Federation.
So it goes back to my point. The president can create a council. A council can exist under the office of the Secretary to Government of the Federation in the presidency.
Government after government, and it keeps existing.
And it normally should have a time gap, but this is what happens in Nigeria, that we have lost the capacity, and that's a major capacity, to be skeptical and to ask questions. Asking questions has now become an anathema. If you go to court now, you will see unanimous decisions. Anytime you see minority decision, it's almost like the person is a bad person. If you go to the civil service, they said, the president said, you can see a memo. Nobody will ask the question to say, can you show me the presidential instrument by which this body was created? Please, attach it to this letter when next you are communicating with me. So, because the attitude has now become like, if you say no, then you are a bad person. So this country must use this opportunity to restate that questioning is not an act of opposition. The presidency coming out in public and explaining how the system failed is a learning moment. We all saw the world when September 11 happened.
Yeah.
America investigated itself and
reorganized
said,
itself.
Our system failed us. So we're now having a Homeland Security Organization. We've seen that happen in many places. So now is an opportunity. Can we have a register of government agencies in Nigeria, maintained by the Office of the Secretary of Government, kept in a database? Can we now have a process of adding an agency into it, either by statute or by creation of the Office of the President? Can we now have a system that says for you to go to the budget line, National Assembly, every agency that you put in the budget line, it's not enough that the budget office sent you the budget. It's also important that we didn't budget last year for this. This year, provide us with the documentation of why this agency exists. So these are the lessons. This is what we learned, America learned from Madoff. This is what was learned from Wirecard. This is how the government now said you cannot be an auditor for more than a certain number of years because, you know, at some point you get entwined with the company. So another person comes to look at the company accounts. So I'm saying that this is an institutional problem. It is not a find the criminal problem.
Yeah. So you have identified a fundamental crack.
Yes.
For whatever, and I'm going to pose a few questions because not only in law do you pose questions, because the law and the court is supposed to help answer the mystery around those questions, but it also will help our nation to, for a moment, redress and say, wait a minute, this is a shame and embarrassment to us as a people.
Yes.
And this is not about one government, because if anything, this has been existing for quite some time.
Yes.
Like you said, we need a long list of those agencies of government, and we need to start scrutinizing.
How did you get set up?
And you know that there was something that was very rampant. You were one, when you were in service, you were one of those who were screaming about Yahoo Mail, Gmail being used for government agencies. Yes. And that's why you see a lot of leaks. Yes. The memos that are being leaked and all of that. I've got a lot of questions which I'm hoping that you will help us answer. Mr. Atiku Abubakar is asking Mr. Gbajabiamila to recuse himself, or the president to tell him to step aside. Politically speaking, does the president, there are those who say the president has done a satisfactory or whatever he needed to do in the phase of the matter. Do you think Atiku's call is needed?
Well, that's what the opposition does in any political environment. Their call is to put the government on the spot. Yes, but a government will have to investigate. You will have to ask agencies of government to advise. Because you can't say, people can't wake up in the morning and say, the chief of staff stole a chicken, so you know, step aside. They will end up in a perpetual stepping aside business. But what happens first is an immediate investigation. The case they cited of the former SGF, there was actually money. It was actually paid. So the SGF had to step aside. Now,
and there was a grant to be cut.
Yes, the issue now is there a letter? Did it emanate from the office of the chief of staff? Yes. So if at any point we see a letter that emanated from the office of the chief of staff, then that introduces a new dimension to the conversation. But if at the end of the day, this man forged the letter himself, or somebody in the office of the SGF, because I've seen people come around and said, you know, that they are working for such and such, we have access to this information or that, and they can give you this. So it is important that we go back to the institutional failure. My own major issue is, from the point that letter came out, how did he traverse all these agencies without anybody seeking to know who is this? Where is the letter of appointment? SGF confirmed that this government agency exists. How did the office of the SGF themselves allocate an office? Because the question should have been, we didn't issue this letter.
All right.